Got it.
Hey everybody, I'm D.Lisa West and I'm a dream doula.
I am Cristina Spataro. I'm a psychotherapist and relationship coach.
And we've been talking for a while now. A year? Has it been a year?
I want to say at least a year. It's been a while.
I'm gonna have to go back to the first time we chatted, but yeah, once a week, usually,
Mhm.
we get together and sometimes we record two conversations and sometimes we skip a week. So basically, once a week, you can hear us chatting about life and things that our clients and ourselves actually are dealing with because
Mhm.
here we are having a life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Here we are having a life, and you know what? Stuff happens.
Yes, it does.
And today I was thinking about fear and how, especially when I start a new group of coaching
Mhm.
clients, one of the first things that comes up is fear
Mm.
because I ask them to design in the first couple of weeks, like, what would you really truly love? If you could have
Mm.
anything in life, what would you
Mhm.
love in your love life? What would you love in your time and money freedom? What would you love in your
Mhm.
health? What would you love in your vocation? What would you love? And most people don't know.
Mm.
I mean, a part of them knows, but the
Mhm.
conscious part that's running around the world doing whatever they're doing and feeling kind of upset and unhappy, they don't know.
They
And
don't know.
once they start to think about it, fear comes up because they don't think they can have it.
I agree. I've also seen that a lot with my clients as well. And I think a real reason why people don't know what they want or they're fearful of it changing is because somewhere along the way, when we've talked about this many times, how when we come into this world and we're these just free spirited children, or most of the time, and it isn't until the adults get to us or somebody gets to us and says, this is what you should be doing and this is what you should not be doing, that we then question ourselves. And that leads to a lifetime of questioning, not in a good way, not in a, do I love this? Am I fulfilling the societal or parental or both expectation of what I should be doing?
Yes. Am I good enough for my dad, for my mom, for my aunt,
Right.
for my sister, for my best friend?
Yes.
And it's so interesting for me. And sorry, this might be a gloomy side road I'm taking us on, but I'm at a certain age where um, my friends are starting to die. I have a lot of friends that are older than me, so they're in their
Mm-hmm.
80s or 90s, and one by one, they're checking out of this life. And I think
Mm,
to myself, did they really live? Did they really have a beautiful life?
right.
Because some of them, I think the answer is no.
Mm,
I mean, and then I think, please don't let that be me.
yeah, don't let that be me. And it's interesting. When I was studying psychology, one of the theorists we studied was Eric Erickson. And I am sure you're familiar with Eric Erickson, or if you're not, what set him apart from the other theorists was a lot of theorists, when they talked about development, they sort of capped it at age 5. You know, Freud was famous for that, and then Piaget. So a lot of them didn't really look at development beyond a certain point. But what made Eric Erickson stand apart was that he looked at development, personality development, human development through the lifespan. So from babyhood to like you're getting ready to kick the bucket. So what I found, he talked about how at each stage we have to resolve a conflict. Like when you're an infant, it's trust versus mistrust. Can I trust my world or I distrust my world? And a lot of that obviously had to do with the kind of parents you had, but how each stage sets you up for the next one. And by the time you get to what he called, um, with like literally a life review kind of thing. So it was basically integrity versus, shame, fear, doubt, and all that. So the whole idea being, if you do that life review, are you looking back on it saying, wow, I did the best I could? Or, I tried the best I could, even though things didn't work out? Or are you looking back saying, oh, should have done this, should have done that? should have done this, should have done that, should have. And kind of how you resolve that conflict. And I remember when I was studying this, even at my ripe 18 years of age, I was thinking to myself, wow, I really want to be more on the integrity side here, and looking back and saying, I don't want to be on the despair side. I want to be on the side that looks back on it and says, okay, I did the best I could, but so some things didn't work out. It was okay because I lived life to as true to myself as possible. And I'm not saying I've been perfect following that model, because I'm still a human being, but I think to the most that we can do is try that. But again, this is where fear is such a primal emotion, and pretty much we are designed, our entire frame of being, our whole autonomic nervous system is designed to keep us out of danger, to essentially keep us alive. So basically, this is why we're so hardwired for fear, because this biological adaptation, it doesn't care about your lofty goals and dreams. It cares about is it perceiving this as a risk that could bring you harm, and its whole reason for being is harm reduction.
Right. In fact, some people would think that fear is keeping you from dying. Like that
Yes.
it really is like this,
Yes.
whatever you're afraid of on some subconscious level, you think you're going to die. Or
Exactly.
a part of you is going to die, right?
Exactly. That's really what it boils down to. So as you're talking about the sympathetic nervous system, which is the system that basically gets things like, oh my God, danger, 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 fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. That is your system. And its whole design is to keep you from dying.
Right.
So if you perceive something in that way, and sometimes the mind, no, oftentimes the mind cannot differentiate between an actual, this is a danger to us, and what we're perceiving as a danger. So if the mind says, oh my goodness, no, this will be the worst thing in the world, yeah, you're not going to do it, because you're going to be afraid, and the fear is going to make you step back. But so a big part of the work I do is getting people to fix that mindset of, you're not going to actually die if this happens. It might be like, a lot of times what stops people from doing things is the fear of what could happen. So I go through a lot of things. Let's say worst case scenario, this doesn't go your way. What exactly is going to happen? Are you actually going to die? And if you're not actually going to die, yeah, you might have an unpleasant moment. Maybe things won't turn out exactly like you want, but you're not actually going to die, which means you got some leeway there to
Yeah.
fix it, turn it around, figure out a different path.
Yeah. Well, even, I think also the idea that we're making choices out of fear or love
Yes.
every moment. And most of us are trained as little children to be careful, don't fall, don't trip,
Yes.
don't drop that, don't
Yes.
break that, don't, all the things we're not
Yes.
supposed to do.
Because you're not
Is
supposed to do.
that's none of that is the love conversation.
Right.
I would love it if you didn't spill your water and it said
Yeah.
no mother.
Yeah.
Ever.
No
Oh.
mother ever. Exactly. And I think the reason those messages are so fear-based is because parents are fearful. I can't even imagine, you have the responsibility of this other human life, and this person is completely dependent on you, and you're responsible for whether or not they live or die. That is an enormous amount of responsibility. So I think that's why the default position for a lot of parents is, I must keep you alive, I must keep you safe, I must encourage you to do choices that will be safe for you. I have a lot of clients who, when they are struggling, even with careers or things, their parents are terrified if they make a wrong choice, they're not going to be financially secure. They're not going to be safe. And my job as your parent is to keep you safe.
So beautifully said. Wow, I just had a great thought while you're saying that, and it flew out of my brain. It'll come back. So one of the quotes I thought about when I was thinking about talking about fear is often quoted as a quote from Joseph Campbell, and something like, "The treasure you seek is inside the cave you fear to enter."
Yes.
No one can actually find that written in any of his books. If you go deep and actually research that, because, well, I would like to think it's really a quote, but I found a quote by a woman who studied with him named Diane K Osborn, and she apparently wrote down these exact words while listening to Joseph Campbell speak.
Okay.
"It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure. The very cave you are afraid to enter turns out to be the source of what you're looking for. The damned thing in the cave was so dreaded, has become the center. You find the jewel and it draws you off. In loving the spiritual, you cannot despise the earthly."
Oh, I love that. You've so got to put that in the show notes.
Definitely. It's in there right now.
Wow. And what's her name? Diane K.
Diane K Osborn, who I don't even know who that is, but she obviously studied with Joseph Campbell, so she's probably written some interesting things too. But it's absolutely true. I've done multiple things in my life that I was terrified to try. And then after I did them, I was like, ooh, that was exhilaratingly, excitingly fun.
Right.
Why did I think it was frightening? And especially for things that you do with your body, like jumping off or going up high distances or going into swimming the first time or whatever, those things that seem really, really scary.
Sure.
Like the Nike slogan, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. And isn't there some other quote or saying that's often said? It's like, go to the edge of the cliff, and when you jump, you realize you can fly, something like that. It's so fascinating. And how to get out of the grip of fear. If you're a listener and you're thinking, well, I have a real fear that this thing is going to happen and this other thing is going to happen, and then my life is going to be terrible. How do you get out of that circular thought of doom and gloom and getting yourself more and more worked up and more fearful? How do you teach people how to do a pattern interrupt on that?
So pattern interrupt, first of all, I acknowledge the thing they're afraid of. So then let's look at that a little bit. What is it you're afraid of with that thing? What is it that worries you about where this could go? And then let's say it went there. First of all, you look at what is the likelihood that's actually going to happen. A lot of times what we fear is actually highly unlikely.
Yeah.
So let's look at the likelihood of that happening. And then, okay, let's say odds are it happens or whatever. Now that it's happened, what could you do to make it better for yourself? And a lot of times, a bad thing can actually turn to a good thing. I see that time and time again in life. Like we think, okay, this is the worst thing, but it actually can lead to something positive. Now, I'm acknowledging people have been through horrible traumas, and I'm not saying those were good things or anything like that. But sometimes we can have experiences in life, and it's all in how you look at it.
Yes.
If you perceive it as the worst thing in the world, that's what it will be. If you can, like we talked about this in another talk, if you can look at something and say, isn't that interesting?
Ooh,
and just
instead of, oh, that's icky. I don't want that.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting? Because then you're seeing it as the completely neutral event it is. So isn't that interesting? And then what can I do about it?
Right, because I think I heard this great quote the other day, and I thought this is absolutely, the whole idea that we have these thoughts, we have, I don't know, 60,000, 600,000, 6 million thoughts a day, some amount, amazing
Oh
amount
yeah, some crazy
every
amount of
day.
thoughts. Yeah.
And then the concept was those aren't even your thoughts. Those are just thoughts floating around that you hear.
Mhm,
I was like, wait a minute, what? I think I'm having a thought and I think that it came from myself. But what if
mhm,
it didn't?
mhm,
What if those thoughts are just like weather
mhm.
and it clears up after a while, after a foggy morning, or it stops raining?
Yeah.
So the fact that people can choose their thoughts or change their thoughts, I
Mhm.
think is an unusual concept to most people.
Absolutely. Because you think, well, because we tend to think of our thoughts as completely objective reality. I'm
Yes.
thinking this because this, but technically not. All thoughts are really your perception of the reality that's going on around you. So, and how you're perceiving it is very much tied to your past experiences, what people have taught you, all this stuff. So, this is why, as much as you can see, and again, for people who are going through really such really terrible things, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we fill our heads with all sorts of negative thoughts based on preconceived notions of things that we think if this happens, it's the worst thing in the world.
Yes. And I saw something cool the other day. It was, do you know who Byron Katie is? She does
Mhm,
something called The Work. A lot of psychologists and psychiatrists know her. She had something online that I saw the other day, and she invited people to go on a morning walk. So I think it's a
mm,
video that's just embedded in her website.
mhm.
So y'all can go find it there at byronkatie.com, or maybe it's thework.com. I'll put it in the show notes. But she
Cool.
said, I want you to walk outside for 10 minutes and look at things, but don't name them.
Yes.
So the observation of what we are walking in and the world that we're living in without saying that's a tree, that's a bush, ooh, I'm late for coffee,
Mhm,
without to just observe and be in that awareness, that presence,
mhm.
of just being awake and aware is a space that a lot of humans don't give themselves time to do.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And you know what? A lot of the work on mindfulness and all that, that's really what it's about. It's really about being in your present moment
Yeah.
and observing what's going on around you and just taking it in and not taking it in without judging it, without attaching something to it, and just
Right.
letting yourself have the experience.
Right. And it's easy to say something's good or bad in
Oh,
life,
yeah.
but is it?
Right.
And the reality I was thinking about the other day is I'm getting ready to teach a creativity class based
Mhm.
on Linda Berry's book called Syllabus. And 10 years ago, she was invited to do a creativity class at University of Wisconsin, I think.
Mhm.
And anyway, in there, she basically said, "What do I don't. How do you teach creativity? I don't know. I want people who stopped drawing when they were kids. I want
Mm.
people that are doctors and lawyers and scientists and artists, and they had to apply to get into her class. I bet there's a really hard, long line to get into her class because it's cool. But one of the things she asks in this journal that looks just like a composition notebook, because every student
Mhm.
has to fill every page of a composition notebook every
Mhm.
semester and hand it in. That's their homework. And she said, "What's a bad drawing?
Mm.
What makes a bad drawing? Is this drawing bad?
Mhm.
And who calls it bad?"
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
it's so easy to see that in the world of creativity and art because we say that's good art or that's bad art. That's a good
Mhm.
song. That's a bad song. Ooh, we didn't sing in tune. Is that bad? Uh-uh.
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's not bad.
Maybe it's not bad. Maybe it's actually a very good song. Maybe it's more complicated than we gave it credit for.
True. True. So Ooh, you must have a movie for us to talk about fear that has a happy ending. Give us a happy ending movie.
Yes, I'll give you a happy ending. So as you were talking, I was thinking of the Truman Show, especially when you were talking about the conditioning people. So here's the thing. For those of you, I mean, who haven't seen it, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler warning. So the Truman Show is about a man who basically his entire life is filmed and created, but he doesn't know it. So the really interesting thing is this was in the 1990s. So this is before the reality TV as we know it. This is before all this stuff. I think the real world may have been on, but it wasn't quite as big, or it was on. And I want to say, I think this is before Survivor became the big juggernaut. So this is before all of that. So the premise is that this studio basically adopts this unwanted baby. And so we find this out because so apparently there's this show that's been on for years. Jim Carrey plays Truman Burbank. And he is such a good actor. You know, he does the comedy beautifully, but he also, if you've ever seen interviews with him, this is a soulful man. This is a deep thinker of a man. And I've also seen him in dramatic pieces where he can pull it together. And so the Truman kind of has both of it, and it's just very well done. Ed Harris plays the egomaniacal director who put this thing in motion, Christoph. So basically, we're kind of getting in the middle of this, where now Truman is played by Jim Carrey as this man who's been observed for over 3 years by everyone on TV. So apparently this is a very popular show, but everything in his life has been created. This whole town, everything, it's this whole creation. But the thing is, in this little town called, I want to say Seaside, you know, his little community there, but they can't afford for him to want to leave. So from the time he's very little, they try to like squash any curiosity, any time of exploring. It's actually quite sad what they do to this poor kid. So like they show a scene of like when Truman is a little boy, because there's like an interview where Christoph is talking, well, how do you stop Truman from questioning? And he says, most people do not question the reality in which they're born. And then they used fear to kind of keep him in his little world. You know, like there's a scene, so big, and the biggest thing they did, which then becomes a catalyst, ironically, for his thing is because even his parents are actors. Everybody in his life is an actor. The woman he married, who's set up to marry him, like everything. So the guy who played his father, they set him up so it looked like he died in a boating accident in a rainstorm, so that he would be traumatized so much that he would never want to go anywhere. And they did it in a way to make him feel guilty too, which would further stop him from going. So he's got a fear of water, of going over water. So this is like a little island community. So you have to drive over water. You've got to do this. So they've made it so he would be fearful to do these things. And so he's just living his life, had really sweet, happy-go-lucky guy, really likes him, unaware. But then things start to happen, which do little cracks in his reality. And he starts to wreck, and little things happen. Like there's a light from like a studio light accidentally falls and crashes. So he's like, what is this? And so a bunch of things start happening, which make him question what's going on here. And then the radio station, they mess up, and he's actually hearing the stage directions. And he's like, he's going down, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, are they following me? Like, so he starts to question. And that questioning makes him start to want to see the world beyond this. And then there is an incident where, okay, spoiler, 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 where the actor who played his father, he basically wants back on. So he arranges to sneak back on. So Truman sees his father alive, and that creates the whole thing. And so basically, he starts to question and want to explore, and they do everything they can to stop him from wanting to leave. But in the end, despite the fact that he had massive fear of water, of sailing and everything. Truman, again, spoiler guys, sorry. Truman winds up on a sailboat trying to sail to the end. He still doesn't fully realize what's happening, but when he tries to sail to the end and they make a storm come, they try everything to stop him. So then he hits the wall, because again, this is a studio, and he sees the door. And and then the director tries to stop him and tries to talk to him and say, there's nothing for you out there. I've created this world for you. I was there when you lost your first tooth. I know everything about you. And Truman goes, you didn't have a camera inside my head. And so he goes, and there was like a signature catchphrase he always said throughout the movie. He would say this to neighbors, everybody would say hello. He's like, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And so Tristov is still trying to keep him in there, and he's like, what are you saying? He's like, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And he walks out the door.
That's a very interesting parable that's similar to how people live their lives until one day they realize they can walk out the door, or they can do the thing they fear, or they could quit the job they hate, or all those things they think they are stuck in, that they have to do, that they can't get out of.
Yes.
And all the times, and if I do often ask people, if you're going to die tomorrow, would you be happy with your life? 99% of people say, oh, no. I mean, suddenly, if life is over tomorrow, no.
Right.
Did I eat enough ice cream? Did I have enough fun trips? Did I love enough people? Did I tell my kids I love them? There are some regrets that almost everyone would dream up if they knew that today was their very last day.
Exactly. And you see that when people who've been given like they have some terminal illness,
yes,
or cancer or something, and you see all of a sudden they're doing the things that they would have always done, or their bucket list.
Yes.
But why are you waiting till you're about to kick the bucket before you do your bucket list?
People have excuses. People have reasons.
Oh yeah, no, there's a ton of reasons. And I'm not saying reasons can't be valid, but at the end of the day, we have a lot more freedom than we think we do. And what I like about the idea of the Truman Show was this were constraints imposed on him. And then once he realized he didn't have to have those constraints, he could go into the world. He could leave the safe, curated world that was created for him. Now, it is scary. It is scary. But it's also wondrous.
Right on. So living the safe world, living in your safety, it's an illusion. Fear is often an illusion to try to keep you in this safe world. That's an illusion. And so what's underneath the whole illusion that we're living in is that we can create a life we love, that we can change our own thoughts, that we can step into the thing that is fearful to us and see the power in making that step, and starting that thing that you already know you would love to do. Do it, people. Do it.
Do it.
Thanks again, Cristina, for a lovely conversation.
Thank you. I enjoy our chats. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
And let me figure out how to stop recording.